It was a warm summer evening when Jasmine first met Marcus. She didn't expect the encounter to change her life forever. But sometimes, love had a way of sneaking up on you when you least expected it. Jasmine was sitting at a small, rustic cafe on the corner of a bustling street in Atlanta. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and baked goods, and the hum of conversation filled the air. She was lost in her thoughts, scribbling down notes for her final paper in college, when a voice broke through her concentration. "Mind if I sit here?" She looked up, startled, and saw a tall, well-dressed man standing by her table. He had a calm, confident presence, with eyes that seemed to hold a story behind them. His skin was dark, smooth like mahogany, and his hair was neatly combed back. His smile was warm, but there was something about it that made her feel like he was hiding something. Jasmine hesitated for a moment, glancing around the cafe. There were plenty of other tables, but something about the man intrigued her. "Sure," she replied, motioning to the empty chair. Marcus sat down, and they exchanged a few pleasantries. He was charming, witty, and soon enough, they were lost in conversation. They talked about everything: her studies, his work in the arts, the city's vibrant culture. It felt like they had known each other for years, not minutes. But as the conversation deepened, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. There was an invisible tension in the air, something she couldn't quite place. It wasn't until later that she would understand why. A week later, over the next few days, Jasmine found herself thinking about Marcus constantly. Their conversation had left a lasting impression on her, and despite herself, she felt drawn to him. But there was a nagging voice at the back of her mind, warning her about the dangers of getting too close to him. She had heard rumors, seen whispers in the corners of her classes, but none of it made sense. Why would it matter? Jasmine's world was not so different from Marcus's. They both lived in the same city, walked the same streets, and had similar aspirations, yet, they were worlds apart in so many ways. Jasmine had grown up in a well-off, conservative family. Her father, a successful businessman, had always drilled into her the importance of reputation and the right relationships. Marcus, on the other hand, came from a working-class family. His skin was dark, and in some ways, that made him an outsider in their world. Their relationship began to develop slowly. Coffee dates turned into long evening walks in the park, where they would talk about their dreams and fears. Jasmine loved the way Marcus saw the world, his ability to find beauty in the smallest of moments. She admired his passion for the arts, his quiet strength, and his unwavering belief in fighting for what was right. But with every smile and every touch, the reality of their situation loomed closer. Jasmine's father had always been adamant about her dating within her social class. He had never explicitly said anything about race, but she knew how he felt. He had always raised her to believe that the right people, the ones who were good enough, looked a certain way, had a certain amount of money, and came from the right backgrounds. Jasmine knew her father would never approve of Marcus. It wasn't long before Jasmine found herself at a crossroads. She had never been one to defy her father. But Marcus was different. He was kind, genuine, and he made her feel things she had never felt before. For the first time in her life, she questioned everything she had been taught. One evening, after a dinner date with Marcus, Jasmine received a call from her father. She tried to ignore it, but when her phone buzzed again, she answered reluctantly. "Jasmine, where are you?" Her father's voice was sharp, with an edge of worry. "I'm just finishing up dinner," she said, trying to keep her tone neutral. "You're still at that cafe?" he asked, his voice thick with suspicion. Jasmine froze. "Yes, why?" Her father let out a long sigh. "I heard something today, Jasmine, something I don't like." Her heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Just stay away from Marcus," her father ordered. "He's not the kind of person you should be associating with." Jasmine's stomach twisted in knots. She knew exactly what he meant. He was talking about Marcus's race, his background. Her father had never been overtly racist, but his prejudice was subtle, ingrained in the way he viewed the world, and that view didn't leave room for someone like Marcus. Jasmine felt the weight of the world pressing down on her as she tried to find the right words. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being torn between two worlds, two loves, neither of which she could fully claim as her own. Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about her father's words. The weight of the conversation sat heavy on her shoulders, making her feel both conflicted and trapped. The part of her that loved Marcus wanted to rebel against everything she had been taught, to defy her father and society's expectations. But the other part of her, the part that had always respected her father's wisdom, the part that feared the consequences of defying him, couldn't help but feel torn. The following day, Jasmine met Marcus at their usual café, hoping that seeing him would clear her mind. But as soon as she arrived, her heart sank when she saw the expression on his face. There was an unspoken tension between them, something that neither of them had dared to acknowledge until now. Marcus was quiet as they sat down across from each other. Jasmine could feel the weight of his silence pressing down on her. "You've been distant lately," Marcus finally said, his voice low and measured. Jasmine shifted uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding his gaze. "I'm not distant, just distracted." "Distracted by what?" Marcus pressed, leaning forward, his dark eyes searching hers. Jasmine hesitated before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "My father, he doesn't approve of us." Marcus's expression hardened, and his jaw tightened. "What does he have against us?" "It's not just us," she replied quickly. It's you." She struggled to find the right words. "He doesn't think you're good enough." Marcus laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Of course, he doesn't, because I'm not from the right background. Right? Because I'm not the right color." Jasmine winced at his words, knowing they were true, but also knowing that Marcus didn't fully understand the complexities of her family's expectations. "It's not that simple," Jasmine said, her voice trembling. "I'm just trying to figure this out. It's hard for me to go against my father's wishes. He's all I've known." "You're not a little girl anymore, Jasmine," Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. "You don't have to live your life according to what someone else wants. You deserve to be happy. Don't you want that? Or are you going to let your father control everything?" The words stung, but they also struck a chord deep within her. She wanted to scream, to tell him that she had been fighting for her independence her entire life. But the reality of her father's influence and the weight of tradition kept her silent. "I'm not asking you to choose, Marcus," she said quietly, "but I need time. I need to figure this out." Over the next few days, Jasmine tried to keep her distance from Marcus, convinced that if she gave her father time, he would eventually come around. But each day apart only made her feelings for him grow stronger. She couldn't deny that she missed him, his laughter, his smile, the way he made her feel like she was seen, like she was more than just the daughter of a powerful businessman. But one evening, when she arrived home from class, she found her father sitting in the living room, his face grim. "Jasmine," he said, his voice low and controlled. "We need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat. "About what?" Her father paused, his eyes narrowing as if he was carefully choosing his words. "I know what's been going on with you and that Marcus guy. I don't like it. I don't want you getting mixed up with people like him." Jasmine's chest tightened. She could feel the familiar rush of anger bubbling up inside her. But she pushed it down. "Dad, you don't even know him. You don't understand him. I don't need to understand him." Her father shot back. "I know enough to know he's not the kind of person you should be with. He's a distraction, Jasmine, a dead end." Her stomach churned. "You don't get to tell me who I can and can't see. I'm an adult now. You may be an adult, but you're still my daughter," he said, his tone cold and final. "And I won't stand by and watch you ruin your future for some fleeting fling with a man who has nothing to offer you." Jasmine felt the sting of his words, but it only fueled the fire inside her. She knew, in that moment, that this was more than just about Marcus. It was about the control her father had over her life, the choices he had made for her, and the expectations he had always placed on her shoulders. "Maybe you don't understand," Jasmine said, her voice shaking with emotion. "But I love him, and I'm not going to let you stop me from being with him." Her father's face turned pale with anger. "You're making a mistake, Jasmine, a huge mistake." She didn't say anything else. She turned and walked out of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that she was about to make a decision that could change everything. But she couldn't go back. She couldn't live her life in fear of what her father might think. Jasmine couldn't sleep that night. Her father's words echoed in her mind. A relentless reminder of the deep divide that now separated her from everything she had known. She was no longer just fighting for Marcus, she was fighting for her own independence. For the right to choose her own happiness. The next day, she couldn't bring herself to face him. Her phone buzzed with messages from Marcus. But she ignored them. She needed time to think. She needed space to process the storm that had suddenly entered her life. But as the day wore on, the emptiness inside her grew. She missed Marcus more than she wanted to admit. His absence felt like a hole in her chest. And she couldn't ignore the ache. She had never been in love before, at least. Not like this. And now, standing on the edge of a decision that would shape her future, Jasmine realized just how much she was willing to risk for him. By the time Jasmine met Marcus again, the tension between them had reached its breaking point. He was waiting for her outside the same café where they had first met. But this time, his expression was clouded with frustration. "Where have you been?" Marcus asked as soon as he saw her. His voice sharp. "I needed space," Jasmine replied, avoiding his gaze. "I've been thinking about everything." "Everything?" Marcus echoed. "About us? Or about what your father told you?" Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. "I didn't say that. Don't lie to me." "Jasmine," Marcus interrupted, his voice rising. "I know what's going on. You think I don't see it? You think I don't know what your family thinks of me?" She was silent for a moment, her throat tight. "Marcus, it's not like that. It sure feels like it," he snapped. "You've been avoiding me. I thought we had something real." "Jasmine, but now I see you're just another girl following orders. Just like the rest of them." Jasmine recoiled, the words stinging more than she was prepared for. "That's not fair." "Marcus, you think it's not fair?" Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "You're the one who's ashamed of me. You're the one who can't make up her mind." "Stop it," Jasmine yelled, her own anger bubbling over. "You don't understand. This isn't just about you and me. This is about everything, my father, my family, my future. It's about everything I've worked for." "And what about us?" Marcus asked, his voice softening. "What about what we have?" "Jasmine, you don't get to have it both ways." Jasmine felt her chest tighten as the weight of his words settled in. She knew he was right. But she didn't know how to make him understand. She didn't know how to explain the storm that was brewing inside her. The conflict between her love for him and her fear of losing everything she had worked so hard to build. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus took a deep breath, his face softening. "Maybe it's not about what you do, Jasmine. Maybe it's about who you are. And who you want to be." The days that followed were filled with more tension. Jasmine tried to continue her routine. But every moment felt like a reminder of the decision she was avoiding. It wasn't until a week later, when she was sitting at home with her mother, that things took a surprising turn. Her mother, who had been mostly quiet about the situation, suddenly broke the silence. "Jasmine," her mother said gently, "your father has been talking about Marcus a lot lately." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I mean," her mother hesitated, looking down at her hands. "Your father, he saw something on television last night. A program about artists and their work. And Marcus was on it." Jasmine blinked, stunned. "What? Marcus was on TV?" Her mother nodded. "Apparently, he's done some incredible work, art installations, performances. Your father was impressed. He said Marcus was different than what he expected." Jasmine couldn't believe her ears. "So, what does this mean?" "It means," her mother said slowly, "that your father is reconsidering. He doesn't like the idea of you being with someone from a different background. But seeing Marcus's talent, it's changed his mind. He's willing to meet him." Jasmine's heart raced. She had never expected her father to change his mind. But now, after everything, there was a chance, a small chance, that her father might accept Marcus. It wasn't over, not yet. Jasmine rushed to the café to meet Marcus, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when everything could change. When she arrived, Marcus was already sitting at their usual table, a cup of coffee in front of him. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. "Marcus," she said breathlessly, "I have something to tell you." He raised an eyebrow, clearly puzzled. "What is it?" "My father, he saw you on TV." Jasmine said, almost in disbelief. "He saw your work, and he was impressed. He's willing to meet you. He wants to get to know you better." Marcus stared at her, as if trying to process what she had just said. "Wait, what? You're telling me that after everything?" "After everything he said, he actually wants to meet me?" Jasmine nodded, a smile creeping onto her face. "Yes. It's not over yet, Marcus. We still have a chance." But as Marcus sat there, his expression unreadable, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that this new development wasn't the end of their problems. It was only the beginning. The day had arrived. Jasmine stood in front of the mirror, nervously adjusting her dress. It was the first time her father would meet Marcus, and the weight of that moment was almost unbearable. She could feel the tension in the air, a sense of impending confrontation that neither she nor Marcus were truly prepared for. Marcus had insisted on meeting Jasmine's father in person. He was nervous, but determined. Jasmine had explained how her father had seen him on the television program. And for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope that things might change. But there was also fear of what might happen if her father still refused to accept him. As they drove to Jasmine's house, Marcus reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Are you sure about this?" Jasmine took a deep breath. "I don't know, but I have to try. I can't let him decide my life for me anymore." Marcus nodded, his eyes full of determination. "Then we'll do it together." The dinner was set, the table laid with the finest food Jasmine's family could afford. Her mother hovered nervously in the kitchen, as if she, too, was bracing for what was about to unfold. Jasmine's father was already seated at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as he glanced over the menu. Marcus entered first, his presence commanding yet humble. Jasmine's father barely looked up from his plate as Marcus introduced himself. "Mr. Dawson, it's an honor to meet you," Marcus said, extending his hand. Her father didn't immediately shake it. Instead, he studied Marcus for a long moment, his gaze intense. "Sit down, Marcus," he said finally, motioning to the empty chair. "Let's get this over with." The tension was palpable. Jasmine sat beside Marcus, her heart racing as the two men stared each other down. Her mother, sensing the discomfort, attempted to break the ice. "So, Marcus," she began, her voice polite but nervous. "Tell us more about your work. Jasmine said you've been doing some amazing things lately." Marcus glanced at Jasmine before responding. "Well, my work is primarily in performance art. I've been creating installations that focus on cultural identity, race, and the complexities of societal divisions. I believe art can be a tool for social change." Jasmine's father didn't look impressed. "Sounds like a bunch of nonsense to me," he muttered under his breath. Jasmine felt the sting of his words. But Marcus remained calm. "I understand that you may not agree with my approach," Marcus said, his voice steady, "but I truly believe that art can create dialogue and bring people together. Even if we disagree, it doesn't mean we can't learn from each other." Her father raised an eyebrow. "Dialogue? What makes you think my daughter needs someone like you to teach her anything?" Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the storm building, and she knew it was only a matter of time before things got worse. But she couldn't sit back anymore. It was time to speak up. "Dad, stop," Jasmine said, her voice shaking but determined. "You don't know Marcus. You don't know what he's been through, what he's achieved. You can't judge him just because of his skin color. That's not who I am. And it's not who you are either." Her father's face turned red with anger. "You think I'm judging him because of his color? You think I'm that small-minded?" "No, but you're judging him because he's different." Jasmine shot back. "Because he's not what you expected. And that's not fair. You raised me to be better than that." The silence in the room was deafening. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Finally, her father set his fork down, his eyes fixed on Jasmine. "You've always been my little girl. Jasmine, I just want what's best for you. But if you think that being with someone like him, is the right choice for you, then I'm going to have to trust you. I may not understand it, but I can't stop you from making your own decisions." Jasmine blinked, stunned by his words. Was this really happening? Was her father actually giving his blessing? But just as Jasmine thought the tension had lifted, Marcus stood up, his eyes narrowing. "Mr. Dawson, I understand your concerns, but you need to understand something. I didn't come here today to beg for your approval. I came here because I love your daughter, and I'll fight for her, no matter what." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. His words were bold, and they struck a chord deep within her. But her father wasn't done yet. "You love her?" her father asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and challenge. "Do you even know what that means? Do you really think you're ready for what's coming?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'm ready. I've been ready for this my entire life. Jasmine is my future, and I'll do anything to prove that to you." Her father stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The entire room tensed. "You don't get it," her father shouted, his voice trembling with anger. "This isn't just about you and Jasmine. This is about everything that comes with it. The backlash, the judgment, the way people will look at you. You think I don't care about her? You think this is easy for me?" Jasmine stood up too, her voice rising in defiance. "Dad, I'm not afraid of what people think. I'm not afraid of who I love. And neither is Marcus. If you can't accept that, then that's your problem, not mine." For a moment, it seemed as though the world was about to collapse around them. But then, in a strange turn of events, her father's posture softened. He looked at Marcus, then at Jasmine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "You're right," he said quietly, his voice more subdued. "I may never fully understand it, but I can see that you two are serious. And if that's what you want, Jasmine, I'll try to accept it." Jasmine's heart swelled with relief. And Marcus, too, seemed to exhale a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The rest of the evening passed with more conversation, less tension. They talked about everything and nothing. And for the first time in a long while, Jasmine felt like she could breathe. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And sometimes, progress was enough. As the night drew to a close and Marcus walked Jasmine to the door, she turned to him, her heart full of gratitude. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it." Marcus smiled, pulling her into a tight hug. "No, Jasmine, we're just getting started." And with that, they stepped into the future together, knowing that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with love, they could face anything.